Hey, guess what? Our favorite members of European Parliament are at it again, and they're pointing out the hypocrisy of NATO in the West. And so first up is Mick Wallace. And I hate calling him that because he's Irish and it sounds like an ethnic slur. But here we go. Here's Mick Wallace.
When Russia drops bombs on built-up areas in Ukraine, I have no doubt that the people in Ukraine underneath the bombs are terrorized. It's a form of terrorism. When the US NATO bombed Afghanistan for 20 years and killed several 100,000 and displaced millions, they were terrorizing the people. A UN survey showed that US NATO bombardments of civilians in Afghanistan, 45% of the people killed were children.
Really?
When the US killed over 1 million civilians in Iraq, was that terrorism? When Israel terrorizes the Palestinian people every day, is that terrorism? When France and the UK and others armed the Saudi UAE to commit genocide in Yemen, where the UN said that over 400,000 are dead and 16 million are starving because of a genocide being carried out with the support of the US, the UK, France, and several European states, is that terrorism? When he's going to wake up and start living in the real world?
So I love what he's saying. I just wish that the people saying it didn't look like Edinburgh Fringe Festival acts. You know what I mean? That's the only thing. Hey, it's just depressing that telling the truth about war is like a fringe thing now. That's all I'm saying. I like Mick Wallace, and I got no problem with the Billy Connolly hair. I got no problem with it. Okay, and here we got one more. So that was great, by the way. That was great. That's why we're featuring it. And here's another woman, Clare Daly. We've also featured on this show before. And she's going to give the 1-2 punch here. Here we go.
State sponsor of terrorism is a term of US law. It doesn't exist in EU law. But a Zelensky advisor called for it in the Parliament magazine. And here we are again, reporting for duty. And all it will do is make peace harder to achieve. Exactly, of course, what the extremists want. No peace, no off-ramps, all bridges burning, and Ukraine a permanent abattoir in a suicidal holy crusade against Russia. So, if you want to start naming state sponsors of terrorism, let's do it. European sponsorship of Israeli terrorism in Palestine. Western sponsorship of Saudi terror in Yemen. ISIS, the product of French, American, British, Turkish and Gulf sponsorship in Syria and Iraq. Decades of right-wing US-backed terrorism against the Cuban Revolution, the Contras in Nicaragua, death squads in Guatemala, in El Salvador. Remember Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, horror after horror, terror after terror. There's nothing constructive about the pot calling the kettle black. Would you ever cop on, start championing peace and enter the war which is patently in the interests of EU, Ukrainian and Russian citizens?
Wow. I think those two should have a band. Or maybe they did before they became MPs. I'm a fan. I'd buy a ticket to their show. Let me throw it over to the journalist, the award-winning journalist, Aaron Mate.
Can you imagine if we had lawmakers like that here in the U.S.? Can you imagine?
Oh, my God. Can you imagine if anybody in Congress said that? Yeah, that's what you're saying.
Now, you notice now the way Claire and Mick are portrayed in the media, they're constantly called Russian apologists. But notice the very first thing that Mick Wallace said in that clip you played. He condemned Russian atrocities inside of Ukraine. So you can't accuse these people of being Russian propagandists. Their problem in the eyes of the establishment is they just simply want to hold our own governments to the same standards that we hold other governments to. And because of that, Clare Daly has a long list of atrocities to list off and horrible crimes that the West has committed, because that's what the West does around the world. And she names all those countries where the U.S. and its allies have meddled. And right now in Europe, you have a continent where led by leaders who are committing economic self-suicide just to be on the lap of the U.S., to receive, to be patted by the Godfather, by the U.S. Godfather. That's what these countries are doing. They're sacrificing their economies. Germany was powered by cheap Russian gas, and they're giving all that up just to be under the U.S.-led umbrella. And you have a few people, luckily, standing up to it. But imagine if we had that actually in the heart of the empire, in the U.S.
Imagine if it got covered on. Imagine if they even covered this on the news in America, right?
Yeah.
You know, let alone having an American politician say Tulsi has come close. Would you agree to that? That she comes the closest?
Well, Tulsi comes close on certain issues, but then on other issues, she goes.
She's not good. I mean, nobody's great on every issue.
But these people are consistent across the board.
But there's
that's just rare.
Yeah, they're consistent about.
Yeah.
Like I disagree with Tulsi on her drone war stuff and her rhetoric around terrorism and things like that.
Yeah,
I totally disagree with her. But she's also the only politician I've seen with the courage to tell the truth about Syria,
absolutely,
to tell the truth about Ukraine.
Yeah,
and that is unbelievably invaluable, and that's why they have to. I think that's why they still smear her as hard as they do. It's because she told the truth about Syria, and you can't do it.
She was expelled from Washington for basically two things. One is she endorsed Bernie Sanders early on, and she called out the corruption of the Democratic Party in rigging the process against Bernie. So that led to her being banished from the Democratic Party establishment after initially she was welcomed as one of their rising stars. And then she also told the truth about Syria. She went to Syria and met with Bashar al-Assad and basically tried to negotiate an end to the dirty war that the U.S. was fueling with billions of dollars and weapons to sectarian death squads. And she called out the truth on these alleged chemical attacks that were being blamed on Syria when all the evidence showed that they were actually false flags by sectarian death squads. And because of that, she was chased out of town. And I have to wonder about Tulsi if she hadn't faced all this abuse from the liberal wing of the party, if people like Hillary Clinton weren't calling her an outright Russian asset, would Tulsi have taken the turn that she's taken, where now she's campaigning for MAGA candidates? I'm not sure. What if they'd actually let her opinion exist inside the Democratic Party and not tried to undermine her and smear her as a Russian asset?
Well, of course. I mean, but I don't think she wanted to leave the Democratic Party. I think she wanted to stay a Democrat, but there's just nothing to it. I don't think she's going to join the Republican Party. I could be wrong about that. I think it would be a mistake. I think you're just joining another corporate party.
Yes.
But some people, like that guy we interviewed in Vermont who's running inside the Republican Party to blow it up. Like what Bernie did the first time, or we thought he was doing the first time. And so I like that strategy, but no one's willing to do it. Bernie wasn't willing to do it. AOC's not willing to do it. Nobody in the squad is willing to do it. Nobody's actually, once you get elected, that you just get absorbed into that party.
Yeah.
And look at Nina Turner, and she's not even elected. She hadn't even elected, and she became a lapdog for the Democrats. It's just gross. They stabbed her in the front, and she said, "Do it again." Nina Turner said, "Do it again. Jimmy Dore's the bad guy, not you guys stabbing me in the front. I didn't endorse her opponent. They did."
Right. Yeah, that's a sad case.
Sad. Nina Turner, sad.
Yeah. And so
sad.
People like Clare, Daly, and Mick Wallace, who are just uncompromising in principle, they are at least in the Western world, the so-called Western world, that is just, it's like seeing a rare species. It just doesn't exist to have politicians like that acting out of that level of consciousness.
That's what Bernie Sanders should be doing.
Absolutely. And he'd make a big difference. And he'd make an actual difference in the world.
Yeah, he can make an actual difference. He doesn't care about making a difference. No. Isn't that weird to think that Bernie Sanders doesn't give a shit? Because he doesn't. Isn't that weird?
I think on foreign policy, he's checked out. On domestic policy, I think he thinks he's taking on the millionaires and the billionaires.
But when you say he's checked out, that's... what do you call it? Excuse. It's an excuse. There's no excuse for what he's doing.
I'm not excusing. I'm just saying I don't think he cares about foreign policy.
I don't think he cares about anything. What the fuck does he ever fight for? He's never fought for fucking anything since I've been following him. He's never used his leverage. He disbanded his whole goddamn movement. It's gone. What's he doing with it? Nothing.
True. That is absolutely true. There is no more revolution.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
Hey, we're going to see you in Miami, West Palm Beach, Denver, Palm Springs, Austin, Burbank. That's right. The Saturday after Thanksgiving here in Burbank, and lots of dates in Los Angeles in December. Go to jimmydorcomedy.com for a link for all our tickets and join our premium program when you go there too.